Hi, I'm Beth Ann Kamenko, Global CEO of Geometry, and I'm happy to be here today in conversation with Rachel Tipograph, the founder of Micmac, and Jonathan Capicco, the head of agency development for TikTok. I love that. I'm joined by Micmac on one side and TikTok on the other side. So I'm sure this is going to be a great conversation. And Rachel and I talk about who knew that the digital shelf was going to someday be set to music. So this should make for an interesting conversation in terms of what we're all witnessing right now in the evolution of social platform and video usage and consumer engagement in ways that I don't think we ever expected before. So I will start with you, Jonathan. This has been a phenomenal time. Oh, and by the way, JK, right?
Sure.
That's what you
That
go
works as
by?
well.
Okay, perfect. So the uptick in TikTok over the beginning of this year, it's just been phenomenal. I think it was something like 50% growth I've seen recently. You can get into the specifics around that. But I'd love to hear a little bit, what's driving the growth? What do you see different in terms of the engagement you're experiencing on TikTok? And then we'll get into later how that's leading us into a moment to buy or to purchase and how brands are really playing in the space productively.
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously COVID's changed the game to a certain extent on how media consumption is happening, and a lot of media consumption is obviously happening at home, and so we've seen all types of media consumption on all platforms, on all channels go up. But I think that TikTok in particular has seen specific growth and probably higher growth than some of those other platforms. I think specifically just because we are really kind of this bright spot at the moment in what is a particularly kind of dark environment, media environment. The news is relentless. It's pretty dark, and we are. If you use TikTok and you go on TikTok, it really is escapism. It's escapism from a perspective of being able to just really be yourself, be authentic, be with your family, be creative with your family, and that's really a big part of our mission. Is really inspiring creativity and joy. And I think that really that's for our audience base and for our users, that's really kind of I think been driven at the moment, and we're really kind of seeing more people and more consumption on the platform. But I think even more excitedly, I mean, you mentioned the 50% figure. That figure is also true of content being created on the platform. It's also true of the video views, the engagements. So, and it's happening across all demos. We were very much seen towards the beginning of the year, or even going into last year, maybe being a bit more Gen Z focused. And as that Gen Z audience has shared TikTok with their parents, with their grandparents, we're really seeing that creativity spread to other generations, and people are really starting to see that the capability to match that sight, sound, vision all together with their families, and really just be a bit silly and really develop that out.
Well, speaking from someone who spent my entire Memorial Day weekend practicing TikTok dances for my niece, I can definitely relate. And before I get to you, Rachel, and bring you into the conversation, I just want to understand a little bit from more of a mass market standpoint. Unlike other social platforms, when they started to skew a bit older, they lost the coolness factor. It was interesting because I don't know if this was fully by design by TikTok or if this has just been what's happened by bringing our parents or grandparents into the dances. And listen to me say our, by the younger generations bringing an older generation at home into the content with them. Has it given more room and leeway for older generations to express themselves through the channel as well without sort of taking out the coolness factor or to limit the breadth of exploration and where it can go in the future for future and younger generations?
I would say yes, definitely. And I think that one of the big differences, I think, with TikTok versus some of the other platforms is we often describe ourselves as a content graph rather than a social graph. And with a social graph, you're kind of connecting to people and family members, neighbors, and automatically when that happens, different generations don't necessarily want to essentially position themselves in that environment to their family members in a
Right.
certain way. But the thing about TikTok is you're never really. I said you spend a very little amount of time on TikTok viewing people who know's content, and you don't really create content for people either. You create content for the overall TikTok community, and that kind of community is built on the things that you love. So the younger generation will continue to be sharing that content and following the influencers and the creators they love on TikTok, and continuing to see that the majority of the content they're experiencing be that. Whereas the older generation will get a very different kind of feed of what they're consuming. And this may come up a bit later as well, but a lot of that content, we talk a lot about like dance and about music and trends and that kind of thing. But there's also a lot of how-tos. There's a lot of, how to look after your family during these times, and all done in a TikTok playful way. So yeah, it's a different kind of experience, I would say, that gives us hope that with this growth, we don't see any kind of drop off.
So what you were saying about the content graph, I think is a great place to bring you into the conversation, Rachel. Obviously, also very focused on creating video with a different maybe outcome at the heart of your original core proposition at Micmac. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you think about that content graph from a Micmac perspective and video creation in your world?
Yeah, sure. We like to talk about content and commerce as large, and whether it's videos or GIFs or static imagery, there's a place and time for all of it in the shopper's journey. And, we've gravitated to video from the beginning because at Micmac, we truly believe that shopping is an emotional experience. When you buy, it sends dopamine to your brain. But if you think environments like Amazon or Walmart, it tends to be the least emotional places online. So we wanted to figure out, how do you send that dopamine to your brain while still driving sales at places like Amazon, Walmart, Target, etc. And what we found when it comes to content and commerce is it has a lot to do with the audience that you're going after, the platform that you're in, and the products that you're trying to sell. So for example, if you're selling a high consideration purchase, like buying a car or a wedding dress or, professional camera equipment, you actually need a lot of content to get someone to buy. When you're selling more low consideration purchases, like paper towels, deodorant, goldfish, then maybe you don't necessarily actually need video content, but what you need to do is remove friction from content to buying. And so you can seamlessly get that item into the cart. You throw something like TikTok into the mix, and it just opens up a wealth of creativity when it comes to the shopper's journey. We've been powering commerce and TikTok since the beginning of the year at Micmac. And the first types of brands to sign up were definitely within that beauty, personal care space. But now we're seeing folks use our software that's more in food and bev environments like TikTok. I think the most important thing for a brand, and JK, you can back me up here, is being authentic to the platform. Like you should partner with someone who knows how to make content for TikTok. If you're completely clueless, that's probably the easiest way to do it. And then we've seen a lot of organic engagement. So unlike other social platforms, I would actually tell you, if you want to drive sales online in those environments, there's really only two ways: paid media or influencer seeding. What's so surprising about TikTok is that organic engagement, even with shopping, is so strong. And so that makes us very optimistic about all the future possibilities of what commerce can look like in an environment like TikTok.
That's exactly where I was going to go next, which was to probe further into, you and I have talked a lot about the next frontier of social commerce and when social commerce becomes more mainstream. Would you consider TikTok getting us closer to that possibility? Or is it just yet another channel that we have to optimize different kind of content to drive to retail?
I think TikTok and all the other social platforms are leading us to this moment, also with the acceleration of consumer demand. So consumer demand for e-com is accelerated by 5 years. Where we thought the industry would be in the year 2025 literally happened on March 10th. And so now for brands, they're like, oh, wow, not only are people spending more time consuming content online, during COVID, but they're also now buying more online. And those two things combined make sense for social commerce to play a much larger role in a brand's go-to-market strategy. So I'd say all of those factors are leading to it. For TikTok, and again, I don't want to speak for JK, I think it's a lot of brands' first moments on TikTok, so they still see it as experiential. Mm-hmm. But that's how all the social platforms started, so they're no exception to that rule. But I think for brands to really start moving more dollars there, and I know TikTok's working on this, more of the attribution ecosystem has to be built out, because once you have measurement, then dollars will come.
Yes. So before we get to the measurement conversation, JK, I would love to hear your perspective on, we had a topic at Cannes last summer where we were talking about, does commerce kill the creativity star? So when you think about sort of the purity of your network, your community, your platform right now, when you start getting brands activating more against it and taking it closer to a shopping moment or a buying moment, does that start to hurt the engagement with consumers? Does it start to polarize certain people?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to, I guess, this. I think that the first part, particularly going back to the what Rachel was mentioning about authenticity, I think that definitely, that's what we say to every brand when we speak to them, and that, I would say, is almost like, at the moment, is our superpower. It's that it is a super authentic environment. As I mentioned earlier, if you look at people's profiles and what they're doing on TikTok, it's because they're not creating content for people they know. It's much more authentic to who they are and the things that they love. And I think that that authenticity goes both ways. So when they're following people or they're following creators, there's definitely more authenticity there as well, in the sense of they, a lot of the creators they follow, they actually start to build a relationship with creators and start to, very much look forward to seeing their content appearing in their feeds. And like anything, if we can bridge the gap between that authenticity and the creator and then commerce, then we're hitting a sweet spot. And that's definitely something that we've got, in our view at the moment, of how we can create that. It's certain additions to our platform that are in the early alpha stages that we're developing. There was a recent example with Levi's where creators made their version of different types of Levi jeans. Mm-hmm. And then essentially it was the people who, the followers of those creators who saw those jeans were able to buy those specific designs. That again is that, it's almost like wanting to mimic your the love of your creator, what they wear, what they do, what they love. Obviously, that there's lower barriers to entry for certain products than others when it comes to that authenticity. But at the same time, anything in context can really come across as, everyone who's on the platform and the creators all do the same things. They all use the same products in their day-to-day life. So there's the ability there to have that kind of join up. And then on the other hand of it, as we were saying, or as Rachel was saying, we are continuing to work on our more lower funnel kind of performance products. At the moment, we are seeing, I think this is partly due to COVID as well, to be honest, but we are seeing a bit more stronger performance to very kind of low barrier to entry performance campaigns. So different kind of actions, like particularly gaming, we've seen some really strong performance where you're kind of clicking to download or clicking to do an action. That ability to kind of keep the length of the actual purchase from TikTok to the next environment as short as possible. We've seen some really strong performance there. But obviously, as we work on some of that attribution and start to pull together that longer term impact, I think that we'll start to see, many more brands coming on the platform, testing more, I would say, direct calls to action. And again, but they will continue to need to make sure the creative remains authentic. Otherwise, we will see on our side that kind of engagement rate and conversion rate drop.
And just a very quick piggyback on top of that, do you find, because you're right about sort of the difference in people's feeds, especially probably generational, do you find that celebrity videos would tend to do better, or do you think that it's more of the maybe TikTok famous people and other influencers that would probably have more engagement from a shopping and buying and brand discovery standpoint?
I think at the moment I would probably lean more towards the creators. Mm-hmm. I think they understand the platform better, and I think they're almost kind of doing this weird jump of going from this creator environment to actually jumping off the platform. And we're seeing them appear in like late night TV shows, and we're seeing them. There was a Hollywood Reporter article recently talking about, how we're going to start seeing a lot of our talent kind of appear beyond the environment. But then there's always going to be potentially a shift back as well, as different kind of celebrities, and really celebrities are creators as much as the organic creators of TikTok, as they see the opportunity to sell even their own products. I think we're going to see a lot of kind of new opportunities around that as well.
So Rachel, when you think about, optimizing and creating the strongest content for brands, are there overlaps in terms of some of those principles that you're seeing in TikTok? Or, I mean, with the exception of the sort of authenticity and kind of being really native to the platform, but are there other things that kind of separate out some of the digital content that you're focused on optimizing around?
Well, JK alluded to it earlier. Like, one of the big content sort of key pillars in TikTok is how-to tutorials. And I actually started my business based off of that insight, was how do you modernize infomercials? And infomercials at its core are informative commercials that would typically deploy how-to tactics. So, I mean, one of our clients is the Walgreens Boots Alliance, and their products are booming on TikTok because organically a bunch of creators just started using it. Or there's the Cool Whip coffee that every creator is making. And then all of a sudden, like, Cool Whip and coffee sales have gone out of the roof. Mm-hmm. So it's the tried and true principles that have literally worked since the late 80s, early 90s in the infomercial that you're now seeing be modernized in an environment like TikTok, but in a way that makes sense for the platform. And so it's reassuring to see that the creative best practices that we've guided brands to deploy over the years are also working in an environment like TikTok. And I'd say the products that seem to be working the best within TikTok are what we say have the WTF factor, where you're like, whoa, how does that work? And then you want to watch the rest of the content. And so just in terms of brands and their merchandising strategy, you might not want to lead with your most ordinary product. You might actually need to think about what's available in your catalog and lead with something that has that WTF factor. Once you do that, you collect the first party data, then you can begin to upsell the rest of your catalog.
Makes sense. So when you're advising brands right now in terms of bringing TikTok into the mix, is there a sort of rule of thumb that you're giving them in terms of the proportion of test and learn? Or, obviously you just talked about the prioritization of maybe the products that you would play around with. Are there other things that they should be thinking about as they, have to think about what budgets they align to this? And then to your point, ultimately the point of measurement and getting a sense of the performance measures associated with it.
Yeah, so we work mostly with physical consumer goods. And I say that because I'd say most of the brands of ours that are spending on TikTok are using upper funnel dollars. So it's like brand awareness, brand engagement campaigns. And in that sense, like, shopping is kind of bonus points because you're not buying the media to drive to a point of purchase. If someone chooses to do that, awesome, but that wasn't necessarily the intent of the media. So I say this because I think right now within TikTok, the most important thing is to, like, build brand equity there. Don't seem lame. So, like, leaning into all the creative things that JK said, you can layer on the shopping component, using Micmac or whatever else you might choose to use, and begin to understand what that customer journey looks like there. I think it's still early days to consider it like a performance driving channel, the way that you would look at like search on Google or even like DPA Facebook ad campaigns. And that would just be unfair. Like, Facebook's been around for almost 15 years. Like, TikTok is just starting to get traction in the US.
So to bring this to a close, JK, it would be great to hear from you about an example that you think really does inspire other brands when it comes to getting closer to the commerce channel. And then to give us maybe a little peek as to what is in the pipeline. And one last thing that I would love your reaction on is when you do look at some of the other platforms, like you mentioned, obviously Facebook and Instagram, Rachel, have been around for a long time, and they're just beginning to really realize the potential in commerce. You look at YouTube and other channels, and they're not at all where you would think they'd be in sophistication. So if you think about your business, JK, a year, and Rachel, you can answer this too, a year from now, are we going to see you come out very quickly as maybe more of the go-to in terms of this next generation's shopping space?
Yeah, I think that we will continue, I think, to really make sure that the environment remains as it is today from a user perspective. It's key that authenticity and that joy continues to be the bulk of the experience on TikTok. And, where brands are really kind of seeing success with us at the moment are really when they kind of get that mix right of being able to make the most of the music on the platform, make the most of the effects on the platform, and connect that to something that is either similar to trends that already exist, or they're creating their own trends that are kind of kicking off. And I think that one of the partners that we talk about a lot is Elf, because they really did do a great job with their Eyes, Lips, Face campaign.
Yes.
Of really, they created their own song, which actually, again, went off the platform. They managed to actually bring in organically celebrities to take part in the challenge who didn't even realize that, in many cases, that it was part of a branded challenge. And they almost created their own version of what has existed in the past with, say, other makeup brands like Maybelline, where they've actually created a signature sound or song to who they are. And I think that that continues to, I would say, be the best way for brands to break through on TikTok, because then when they do get served something that may be a little bit more of a harder call to action, they've already kind of experienced the brand and they're making the connection between that authentic voice and then something that is maybe more commerce focused. I mean, going into the next couple of years, I mean, obviously, we now have a new CEO that's coming from a very entertainment background. And I think that will continue to be a big focus. But then globally, we are seeing a lot of that commerce piece grow. And I think that that's really, honestly, as we've been saying, it's been accelerated by COVID. So the idea that people are getting more used to, buying more products, even, direct to consumer brands are now becoming, they're going from those smaller size companies to now large size companies. I think PepsiCo recently released their own direct to consumer website. Yeah. And so again, as that grows, automatically there's going to be more opportunity within TikTok to connect a direct purchase to a great bit of content or, a fun kind of silly item that a brand wants to kind of connect to.
Rachel, any agreement, disagreement with that?
I mean, Elf Cosmetics is a client, so I definitely support what JK said. And I was just talking with Ekta, their chief digital officer. And I think the creativity that they've deployed in TikTok is now translated even to their owned and operated channels. So one of the key drivers right now for them for conversion is this AR application that allows you to try on the makeup. Like that's where the lion's share of their e-com sales are coming from right now. So when you think of the reinvention of the digital aisle and how do you recreate that in real life experience, a lot of the creativity that's been existing in social channels is also moving now to owned and operated. And I think Elf is a great brand to watch.
Could not agree more. Well, thank you both for this incredible conversation, Micmac and TikTok together. I'm sure that the combination of the two of you, and then hopefully we can insert geometry into that mix too, and bringing more brands into the space, will continue into the future, and we'll get back together and have a really interesting conversation about some more use cases, case studies, and the ways we're really exploring authenticity across the TikTok channel. So thank you both for your time today. And again, everyone else should be welcome to reach out to both of you through, obviously through TikTok and then through LinkedIn and your other social channels, Rachel. I'm not sure if you're on TikTok yet doing your dance moves or your how-to videos, your makeup tutorials. And
there, but you won't be able to find me because it's not about our social graph. It's about the content graph.
There you go. Excellent. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for having us.